Mike Gallagher.
I've been telling you a lot about this project that we've been a part of and urging you to go online to usmadesolar.org. Tori Whiting is a research associate at the Center for International Trade and Economics at the Heritage Foundation. Tori helps write, edit, and promote Heritage's premier annual publication, which is the Index of Economic Freedom. Let's welcome on our guest line, Tori Whiting. Hey, Tori, thanks for joining us. How are you?
Hello, Mike. I'm great. Thanks for having me.
My pleasure. I'm a big fan of the Heritage Foundation. I love the work that they do. They've got a long history of conservative public policies. They're champions of free enterprise, limited government, American values. You know, we've known for the last 8-10 years, businesses have been challenged, economic growth stunted. I'm so grateful we have a president who seems to get it and fights hard for American business. Now, the big challenge seems to be how the massive government gets out of its own way. On the one hand, they subsidize certain industries. On the other, they harm these same industries with anti-competitive practices. And one industry that you've been spotlighting, and we've been doing our best to spotlight as well, is the American solar industry. Can we dive into that for a moment or two?
Absolutely. I'd love to. So, right now, the International Trade Commission is investigating a case brought forward by two specific solar companies, Suniva and SolarWorld, under what's called Section 201, which is a really obscure part of trade law where a company can petition if it feels that it's being injured by imports.
Injured by imports, and this is fascinating because this is it's the antithesis of free enterprise, limited government. Talk about how this deal is so bad for our domestic solar industry and why it matters to the U.S. consumer, Tori.
Well, this particular investigation, it's a little bit counterintuitive because you would think, yes, if we restrict foreign companies from importing into the United States, that could be good for domestic companies, right? But unfortunately, that's not the case with this particular instance, and when it comes to imposing tariffs overall.
Mm-hmm. Go ahead.
I was just going to say this Section 201 investigation is the way that I kind of describe it is it's just another subsidy for solar. But what it's doing is picking winners and losers within the solar industry.
Right.
So it's subsidizing one small part, which represents about 15% of all of the employment in the sector, in consequence of thousands of other jobs.
Does the domestic solar industry need federal government assistance? Can it survive without it?
Here at the Heritage Foundation, as you mentioned before, we are strong believers in free enterprise and free market, and the solar industry is actually one of the most subsidized industries in America. They have grants and subsidies and tariffs and everything under the sun. And we believe that if you get the government out of solar, as well as other renewable energies, that those companies are really going to be forced to compete with the international market, and they're going to be more prosperous, and they're going to be more affordable for Americans.
Now, these two companies, they're the only ones filing this claim, right? The entire rest of the solar industry is against them, saying that if you increase the price of these panels, you're going to crush demand. It'll threaten jobs throughout the entire industry. There are a lot of U.S. manufacturing jobs at risk here, right, Tori?
So the jobs that are at risk with this particular case are actually in more of the service-oriented aspect of the solar industry. So we're talking about installation, maintenance, etc., those types of jobs, which represent roughly about 80% of the industry. The manufacturing of solar panels only represents about 15% of the industry. And I think you bring up a great point when you say that this can really harm jobs, because history tells us that that is the case with these types of investigations and cases. Because back in 2002, President Bush implemented tariffs on steel imports of up to 30%. And over the course of a year, there were over 200,000 jobs lost in the United States in steel-consuming industries.
Wow.
So while the industry is not nearly as big as steel-consuming when it comes to solar, these types of tariffs can have just detrimental effects across the economy.
Right, and that's why we've been so focused on this, and I'm so glad to be able to urge our listeners to go to usmadesolar.org. Jobs, jobs, jobs. I mean, the president has been about job creation. The economy, has been booming. I mean, we've got a lot of great indicators. The ITC has made their ruling on this. It goes now to the president to decide what to do. What do you believe the president should do moving forward? What's the right thing for the president to do in this case?
I'd say the right thing for the president to do would be to get out of the way. The best way for the government to help the market create jobs and increase prosperity for Americans is to get out of the way. It's to lower taxes, it's to lower regulations, it's to decrease barriers, especially like tariffs that allow for intermediate goods to come into the United States at a more competitive price. So I'd say I would tell Mr. President, just step out of the way and let the industry do its job.
Let the industry work. Tori Whiting from the Heritage Foundation. The U.S. economy works because it's based on free markets, propping up failing companies, and subsidizing an industry that only it fills the swamp. Learn more about why this is such bad news for you. Please go to usmadesolar.org, usmadesolar.org.